Old man doing a podcast. Real weirdos. We have English degrees. Real weirdos. We talk about movies for way too goddamn long. You guys see that Jonah Hill is gonna play the guitarist from Grateful Dead in a Martin Scorsese movie?
Fuck no, I did
Jerry
not see
Garcia?
that.
I saw this yesterday. Yeah, Jerry Garcia, that's his name. The guy that makes the ice cream.
Yeah.
No, I have not heard of this at all.
Do you think that's a good choice? I was like, I could see that. Jonah Hill's getting a little older now.
Honestly, Jonah Hill, he's at the point.
He's got some
Yeah,
range.
he's at the point in his career where he's kind of gone a little rogue from like his typecast that he was at before, and I kind of just think that he is at the point where he can really do anything he wants. He's able to pull himself out of that hole that he was in a little while as like the dorky, fat, geeky guy. I really think like Wolf on Wall Street was like, oh shit, this guy's got range. So I really think he could do it.
He shed his like super bad persona long ago.
Mm-hmm.
None of those other guys did. Michael Cera and whatever the McLovin kid's name is.
I don't think. I mean,
No,
yeah, they
really.
just kind of kept riding that wave. But I think he really wanted to do something a little different. And
Jonah transcended, man. He got out of that for sure.
Moneyball was pretty good.
Moneyball was great,
too.
and then I mean, he got ripped, and then he's also done a lot of that like sacrifice your body for the role thing, where he's like yo-yoed weight a lot, and he's one of those kind of actors that it's hard to kind of peg down his intention in the industry. Like, what is he trying to do? He's directed a few things. He's been in a couple artsy films. It's like he's done some Netflix stuff. It's like, what is
I think
his
he
aim?
just does whatever the fuck he wants, which I absolutely respect.
True.
But it got me thinking, like, what musical biopic hasn't been made that should be made? Like, whose musicianal life story needs to be told?
Keith Moon.
You know what I know? What?
Keith Moon.
Keith
So
Moon.
many.
Oh man, Keith Moon.
The Who are an interesting band in my opinion because they rode that wave of like British invasion pop music, but they weren't relying on like old blues roots like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones were. The Who was an entirely like ridiculous and different band from the start, and Keith Moon was just like
he was
quietly
an animal.
underrated as one of the most like debaucherous people in all of music.
He did the thing where you throw the TVs into the pool, and I think he drove a car into the pool.
Yeah.
It's just like he died at like I don't know, 27. Maybe he was part of the 27 club. I'm not sure.
He passed out at a concert once, and they had to like get a kid who knew this Who songs on drums to come up and play the rest of the concert.
Really?
Yeah,
I
because he
heard
just
about
took way too much ketamine before.
Ketamine.
Just passed the fuck out.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was an interesting guy. There are a few projects that got like started and then they fell apart. Mike Myers at one point was like slated to play him, but then they were like, "You're a little too old now," so I don't know.
And I think everyone kind of hates Mike Myers in Hollywood. He's kind of like a notorious asshole.
Really, I did not know that.
Oh, the Love Guru?
Yeah,
Dang.
the man from the Love Guru. Yes.
Such a great. I love when we.
It's not Austin Powers or Shrek. It's the Love Guru. I remember I saw that with my girlfriend, and I hated it so much. It was like the least funny thing I might have ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't recall ever seeing that movie. It seemed like one of those. It was like the Zohan, like with Adam Sandler. It was like that era of those guys' career where they were just like, "I'll do anything for money because I got a big ass mortgage." And it's just like, all right, cool. Well, you get that bag, but yeah, I didn't know that about Mike Myers. I always kind of expected him. He was such a gregarious character. I always expected him to be.
Yeah, it surprises you sometimes, Like, I guess people were really shocked when they turned out that Ellen was a giant bitch.
I always saw that.
That
I don't
didn't
know.
surprise me
Yeah,
at all.
I don't know. She always
Yeah.
had that energy about her where, like, you could see that kind of just, like, vindictiveness, I guess, like, in, like, the way she spoke to people. And I don't know. I always thought her stand-up was really, really mediocre. So I don't know. I don't get
Her best work will just be a small, like, not small, but like a little voice acting contribution to the Finding Nemo series.
Yeah, probably
honestly.
that's probably her best credit is Dory.
Like, yeah. I mean, her show wasn't. I mean, it's a talk show. Let's
So
be
you
honest,
found
right?
Dory to be good.
Well, I mean,
well, not the movie
yeah,
Finding Dory, but Finding Nemo is a fucking classic.
it was a
bro.
huge success.
Finding Nemo slaps,
yeah, like,
man. Like I don't give a fuck what you say. That movie's
Slaps
awesome.
who?
I didn't see Finding Dory.
Finding Nemo is one of the best, like kids movies. I think it's still
Yeah.
entertaining to watch as like a 31-year-old, like with my niece and nephew.
Yeah, you got the kids to watch the kids' movies with.
Well, you don't have to
I,
feel
I don't-
bad watching kids movies.
Right. No, the best ones should be entertaining for adults. Absolutely. You
Atlantis
got those
is still
levels, you know,
amazing.
like like The Simpsons was like that, you know? It's amazing when you watch it as a kid, but as an adult you see so much more in it, so it operates on these different levels, these different wavelengths.
Well, like Hank Azaria, for instance. I love his work as an actor normally, but then when I found out that he did such extensive voice work in The Simpsons, he's like so many different characters.
There's so many. Yeah.
It made me love it even more. I mean, he's hilarious.
It's so funny. I never got into The Simpsons. That's such a weird thing
Really?
to say. Yeah, I don't know.
It's interesting.
My parents were like really like I don't know. Like my parents enforced strange rules when I was a kid. So they were like, you can like watch Godfather and Goodfellas, but you can't
Right,
watch
Boogie Nights.
Yeah, and Boogie Nights, but you can't watch South Park and Beavis and Butthead. Like all the animated stuff was off the table for me. So it was like I had to like sneak around watching that shit, but like I could openly watch Goodfellas. It was so
What
hypocritical.
a strange rationale.
It's because it was Italian. It was because it was Italian culture, and my parents were like, "Okay, well, that's our culture in their world," you know, like because that's the
Boogie
type
Nights?
not Boogie Nights, you fucking troll. You obviously know what I'm talking about. Jesus.
Oh yeah, Coming to America.
Yeah. That was also one of my dad's favorite movies.
What about that cartoon where the dog eats the spaghetti?
What?
They show you that all the time. What's that movie? The dogs eat spaghetti?
I have no idea
I
what you're
don't remember
talking
that
about.
They're like
Oh,
eating
you're talking about the Lady in the Tramp.
Lady in the Tramp.
Oh,
yeah.
the dog
Yeah.
eats the spaghetti.
That's like-
that was so fucking cryptic.
They
that's
like
that's for
kiss.
like children.
Yeah,
that's a
Simpsons
kid.
and South Park were like, I don't know.
Well, I just thought maybe they let him watch that cartoon because it had meatballs in it. I don't know.
Oh my
Oh,
god,
shit.
dude! Like you were building that joke as you were talking. That was great.
Oh, I'm not thinking at all. I'm just saying things.
Man. I can tell. All
Yeah,
right,
that's where I'm at
Well,
today.
Speaking of, saying
Yeah,
things-
welcome back to the most professional film podcast on the internet, where 2.5 white men from California ramble about movies for way too goddamn long. Today, we're talking about Man on Fire from director Tony Scott, with Denzel Washington, Christopher Walken, Dakota Fanning, and Mickey Rourke. This is not to be confused with the 1987 Ali Sharoki film, Sharoki film of the same name.
change it.
Yeah.
Change
saw
it.
that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna go with Jeff this time. Change it. So in case you were confused, which nobody was, it's not that movie. This was a Jeff choice.
Yeah.
So Jeff, can you briefly sum up Man on Fire and tell the people why we watched it for the show?
I think last episode we were recording, I was planning on picking a different movie, and it had just come up that you had not seen Man on Fire. I think it was because we were talking about Tony Scott, and
Yeah.
you just had mentioned that offhand that this was a movie you hadn't seen, and both me and
I hadn't
Alex
seen it.
were kind of surprised by that.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, this guy needs to see this movie immediately, because to me, this is just like, as far as like the boilerplate action movie formula, I think this just hits all of the proper checks and goes down the list perfectly. There's so many movies that are like this that don't do it as well. So if you're going to watch like kind of a testosterone driven, Bible thumping, gun shooting action movie, I think like this is the one.
All right. Well, we will get to all of that. Before we do, though, I'm curious about, like, let's talk a little bit about Tony Scott. He's Ridley Scott's brother, has many credits to his name, and I'm just wondering how you guys feel about him generally.
I didn't know he existed at first.
Really?
And that his relation to Ridley Scott, yeah. But I obviously am
But you've
very
seen so
familiar
many
with
of his
this
movies.
movie.
You have to
Yeah.
have.
Like, I just didn't make that. I don't know. Tony Scott is just such a generic name compared to Ridley Scott that, like, it just flew over my head.
I'm with
I
you.
guess,
Yeah.
the past
I didn't
few
know
years.
either.
And it's weird that he's British as well because he makes such America movies. You know, Top Gun.
Mhm. Yeah.
Top Gun
right?
is definitely his most famous.
Sure.
Followed up by, let's see, Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Yeah.
He did the Will Smith movie, Enemy of the State, Spy Game with Brad Pitt, and then these Denzel movies where Denzel plays action man,
Mhm.
essentially.
I really like Tony Scott's movies. I didn't know. Like, generally, I like movies before I like directors. It's not until usually I talk to you or something that
Right.
you kind of bring up, like, hey, all those movies you like are made by the same person. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I like that guy.
Yeah, we were looking at his filmography after we recorded last time, and you were like, holy shit, I think I really like this guy.
Yeah, I mean, Beverly Hills Cop, I mean, amazing. Especially 2, in my opinion, is the best one. And I thought that was pretty cool. He was also an executive producer on Assassination of Jesse James, which, I thought that was kind of something worth mentioning
nice.
because that's
Yeah,
a
that's-
fantastic movie.
We love that movie.
And but generally, I really love his filmography. Domino, he definitely developed a style much later, whereas before he was kind of just a director making good or decent movies. But he definitely got like an edge to him in his later filmography, which I thought was almost cute.
Yeah. We are going to get to that. Trust me. Yeah, I'm on a little bit of a different wavelength with Tony Scott. I love True Romance. True Romance is one of my absolute favorite movies. I think it probably would have been better directed by Tarantino, who wrote it, but there's something really charming about that movie that I find endlessly rewatchable. But I could really give or take most things. I mean, Top Gun is fun for what it is. I don't remember Beverly Hills Cop 2. I'll be honest. And then towards the end of his career, he developed a visual style that I'm not a fan of. But yeah, like I said, we will get to that. Or we could just do it right now. I have these categories here. I've got visuals, score, and the story and the narrative. But we can go visuals, or just okay. I know Jeff likes this movie. Alex, what did you feel generally about Man on Fire? How long had it been since you've seen it?
It's been about 10 years since I've seen this movie. I was with Jeff, though. I was pretty surprised to learn that you hadn't seen it because it's extremely popular and I feel like well-liked with normal people that I've talked to. I hated it this time around. I don't think it stands up at all. I think it's
Interesting.
honestly, garbage.
Garbage.
The filmmaking, the writing, the editing, the score's good because it reminds me of Gladiator a little bit, and that's about it. Yeah, I don't know. This is gonna be harsh for me, but I hated this.
This
movie.
is interesting because I thought it would be me versus you two. It turns out it's going to be me and Alex versus Jeff, kind of. So the way I was going to present this is asking you guys to help me figure out a mystery. The mystery being why I kind of like this movie, even though I think it's crap. Because I do kind of like it, even though I think it's crap. The visuals, if we want to start there, that's an interesting place to start because I don't know if you got this, but I often feel that Tony Scott doesn't have faith in his own images. He uses what I like to call superfluous motion. Like he's always moving the camera. He's always adding all these little effects to the point where it's distracting and it doesn't feel like there's a purpose other than to just be glitzy. I don't know. You feel that?
Exactly. So I think I know why we were talking about him last time. It's because City of God happened to use at certain times these same techniques. But I think the difference here is that City of God used these techniques in an intentional, a clean, and a not superfluous way. Whereas this is like made by an emerging pubescent junior high school edgelord. And I think that the color saturation look like when someone messes with a display setting and then changes the language to Hungarian on the TV menu so you can't switch it back and you just have to fucking deal with it. And then towards the end of the film, I was medically diagnosed with epilepsy.
Dude, I wanted to put an epilepsy warning on this episode so bad. I was like, dude, if you have epilepsy, do not watch this movie. Jesus Christ. The fact that it doesn't have one when you start it is ridiculous.
I know, this should get like sued.
I love that we are kind of have the gamut here. Jeff really likes it. Alex hates it. I think it's terrible, but I kind of enjoyed it. And that's an interesting point because it speaks to the reception to this film. This movie is critically reviled, like absolutely reviled, but it has a enormous popularity with the general audiences.
Yeah, like I feel that. I didn't read any of the reviews on this film, but I feel
we're gonna check some out later in a little new segment. But yeah, I was trying to figure out why I liked it because the visuals were nauseating and I hated them. Not quite as much as his very last movie, Unstoppable, which is Denzel Washington on a train that won't stop. I hate that movie. And I think it was less distracting. The visual style was less distracting for me this time because even though like I didn't like the movie, I really liked the core of it. I thought it was really well done, and that owes itself to the two lead actors. Denzel has like a tremendous gravity to him in this movie and pretty much every movie. I mean, come on. It's Denzel.
Yeah.
The dude could do anything and it would be great. And Dakota Fanning, man, she was like one of the best child acting performances I've ever seen.
Yeah.
She was like preternaturally good.
Yeah,
it was weird.
It's weird. Like, yeah, she has an uncanny ability to act, and not only to act, but act convincingly. And I enjoy this movie, so I think I watched the behind the scenes on it like a long time ago on like a DVD I had of it, and I remember hearing on there that they ad-libbed a lot, like Dakota and Denzel, so she already had the confidence with her to like ad-lib scenes with like a mega star like Denzel. So I think that just kind of speaks. Yeah, I think she crushed this role to the point where I think she really shined stronger than Denzel at times, but she was just in less of the movie overall.
Yeah, because with Denzel, you're not surprised. You're like, Denzel's being Denzel. He's being a badass with this heftiness to him, and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. Her, it's like, who's this little lady?
Exactly.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, she crushes it.
Yeah, and I mean, that draws us into the question of like the story / narrative. So I had this expectation of this movie and it did kind of surprise me because it went in a direction that I didn't quite expect, or rather it was structured in a way I didn't quite expect. I knew that it was about a little girl getting taken and Denzel Washington like going off on a rampage. That's all I knew. And so I expected about 15 minutes of buildup and then basically gunshots and explosions for an hour and a half, and then it ends.
Yeah.
And it's more subdued than that. And I think the best part of the movie is that it takes its time in the beginning and sets up the dynamic between Denzel Washington and Dakota Fanning. Mm-hmm. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I think this movie has a really great slow start, a slow burn. It sets up kind of not only that, but it sets up kind of the political climate of Mexico City and this world that the movie is trying to portray with the cops and the criminals and kind of how they interact. And I think it kind of sets you and seats you in the world in a way where you can go, okay, this is now believable.
Yes, and that's definitely to the movie's credit because everything else fails, but spending so much time with those two, when it was happening, I was like, wow, we're spending a lot of time with this, and I was kind of antsy for it to get to the good stuff, get to the murdering, but when it did, I was like, I missed that dynamic. Like the movie kind of fell apart for me after that.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, I actually have to agree with what you guys are saying. Like, It made the relationship make sense, right?
Yeah. It made sense in a way that was believable in a not father-daughter story, in a bodyguard, child that he's protecting story where it's like, why would you care, especially in this climate? It really does well setting him up kind of as a character. I mean, they're a little too vague on, I guess, his backstory too early in the movie where you're like, okay, so what is he like? And then later they're like, he's an assassin. You're like, okay, but yeah. But anyway,
It's lazy. It's lazy.
And I just want to reply to just a couple of your guys' points before we keep moving on, because I do enjoy this movie, but I also do see its faults very clearly. I mean, it's kind of hard not to. It wears its faults on its sleeve pretty hard. It kind of throws them in your face constantly with the quick cuts and the nauseating epileptic color tones and the like highly this up, like it just cranks up the film grain in a way that just really is distracting at times, and the way it plays with light. But I do think at the core, like I said in the beginning, is that there is actually a very good movie here. There's some good symbolism, some great metaphors that are just for a movie like this.
What's the good symbolism? Is it the fact that he has Christ-like figure things and his name is JC? I feel bad I didn't notice that. There's a review from Christianity Today that I included in my notes here, where it says, it suggests that John Creasy, JC, is a Christ figure. Scars, prayers, acting as savior. But where Christ overcomes evil with good, JC uses heavy artillery. 1.5 out of 4.
Great.
I loved it.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah, it's a pretty good review.
Jeff is not amused.
I was just kind of in the middle of a point, but yeah.
Sorry, continue.
I've kind of lost my train of thought. So yeah, it's basically a I don't know. Next point.
You were saying for this kind of movie, the metaphors and symbols work well. And then Jesse asked about specific examples, I believe.
I think that there's just a little there's cute examples. They're not mind-blowing. They're not they're not Keatsian level symbolism. And if that's what you're looking for in this movie, I think you have a problem. It's just cute little moments, like picking the dandelion out of the concrete, like something nice growing out of like this concrete jungle. It's like this kind of idea of a person emerging out of like this disgusting life of like murder that they've lived, and like this guy is in all purpose, he's a pretty horrible dude. I mean, Denzel plays like a guy who just like openly tortures people and sticks Semtex in their ass.
This movie is mean. This is a mean-spirited film.
Yeah,
for sure.
It definitely doesn't pull any punches with like how revengey the revenge story gets. But I think at the core there is an idea. But I really agree with what you were saying, that I think Tony Scott's just very insecure in his directing style, which is strange to have in a director so late in their career, to where he has to like muddy everything up with this very distracting visual style. And it kind of worked in Domino, but it didn't work in this.
So I think that you're right, Jeff, as far as like it is easy to see like where the flaws are in this film. And like I don't think that any one of the three of us ever thought that this movie was like, winning Oscars or anything like that. But it does a good job to create a like story that is really popular with people, which at the end of the day is like the point of going to watch a movie, right? So I can't be too I have to change my parameters a little bit when I talk about this film, right? Like if we were talking about
do you though?
I mean, I feel like I do a little bit, because if I'm taking, like if we did an episode on Goodfellas or The Godfather or like Lawrence of Arabia, I don't feel like it would be fair to compare this film the same way and be like, oh, well, it's not one of those three movies. It didn't do those three things or whatever, so it's a shit movie, right? Like I can't do that. There are films that I like, Independence Day, even The Mummy goes back to what we were discussing about really, really good, watchable, digestible, and consumable bad films, or just a little more lowbrow films. However, this movie, watching it again, I just got really angry and I could not ignore the flaws that it wears on its sleeve.
What made you angry the most?
Denzel's character and the portrayal of Mexico. Not in like, oh my God, they portrayed it wrong, they're racist or anything like that. I just think that it's a hilarious caricature of Mexico. There are moments where Denzel speaks perfect Spanish, but then he'll severely butcher simple words like madre. He keeps calling that character, that nun, madre, but then will speak perfect Spanish to her later on. And then there are other times where if the dialogue wasn't in Spanish and was in English, it would be incredibly lazy writing. But they use the foreign-sounding nature of the language to get away with it and writing shallow and empty dialogue, especially if it's between Mexican politicians or the journalists or the national, like, people involved. It's just, no one talks like that simple. And the subtitles are all over the screen. It was just really pissing me off. But then Denzel's character most likely, is the one that I feel that he is a potpourri of like daddy complex noir. He's a washed up macho broken man. He's ex-military, kind of criminal, kind of has loose morals, has a drinking problem, maybe a tragic past, but that all makes up for an overly abundant like mess of traits that make his character exhausting to deal with. And he has the thing where it's like, I need to do one ultimate thing at the end to redeem all of this. And if they had run with one trait, like he's a severe alcoholic, okay, I could deal with that. But it's just so many things. He tells them none at one point, I'm one of the sheep that got lost. And I was like, okay, this dialogue is no more better than a Steven Seagal movie, even though Denzel's delivering it.
Ooh, it is a testament to Denzel that you buy lines like that.
Yeah,
like
I mean, he was great.
To his acting.
He was great.
Yeah, you said a couple of things there that I want to point out, and I totally agree with you, by the way, about his character and how sort of undercooked it was. How they used all these elements, like the drinking problem doesn't really come into effect. It's only there to have a small character arc where he looks at the bottle and doesn't take a drink, but doesn't affect the plot in any way.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't really know about his past, which isn't too big of a problem. But this goes back to what you were saying a few minutes ago before the big tirade.
Sorry.
About expectation and like what a movie should succeed on its own terms, right? Like you don't expect Indiana Jones or The Mummy or something like that to wow you. And that's to Jeff's point about like the symbolism, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
all this movie really needs to do is be like a thrilling, you know, action movie with some good characterization. And it halfway does that. The characterization is there for sure. But I just wanted to point out that like I agree with you that you don't want to judge every movie based on the same criteria, of course, you know. There's no way you would expect this to be anywhere near like There Will Be Blood. And nor should it be, because it's not trying to be, I guess is my point. We also talked about the score a little bit. And you talked about how nothing in here was trying to win an Oscar. I think the score was, and that was distracting to me.
That's fair. Yeah.
Got a little too Lord of the Rings for the subject matter. A little too...
Yeah, I really like the score in this movie because it uses a lot of Trent Reznor songs, and
it does. I like the use of Nine Inch Nails.
So
for
I
sure.
mean, I mean, you're gonna win for me just by putting like Trent Reznor songs in your movie, and so that sold me. I was like, every time one of his songs came out, I was like, all right, that's cool. I like it. You know, this is a turn your brain off movie, and this is my version of like Marvel. You know, is like this kind of movie that's allowed to be vapid because it's really like not trying to be, which I think Marvel movies are trying to be vapid because they're like trying to appeal to a mass market. Whereas I think this movie is just vapid on its own like mistakes and errors. But there are some pretty neat nods to other types of music. Like there's in the club scene, which is by far the most hilarious scene in the movie, in my opinion. They're playing a psytrance band called GMS. They're playing their remix of the Kronos Quartet song from Requiem for a Dream, which I just thought was like,
no way.
yeah, such
Really?
an eclectic version, like such an eclectic choice, because it was such a. I listened to that song because I went through a huge psytrance phase, and so it was just really funny that was what they were playing. It was like dana dana dana. Da-da-da-da, but it had like the psytrance track over it. Yeah, they made
That's
a remix
cool.
to that song. So I was just like, oh, that's cool that they like threw that in there. That's a very niche song, and that also kind of sold me on the score.
I mean, the music, the soundtrack, I will say, maybe not just the score, but the soundtrack is decent. It's good. It's not. It doesn't. That's not what is breaking the movie.
Yeah,
No, not at
it's
all.
definitely not the movie's drawback. You're like, oh, this is a good one, except for the score.
Yeah.
It's all right. I'm just saying there are a few moments where I got a little too like, I don't know, like I just have to call it Oscar baity. It has that, I don't know, almost like late 90s aesthetic to it where it's like, this does not feel quite right for a violent revenge thriller.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There was one moment, there was a nice callback that I liked in the score where Denzel like comes back to the house, or he's doing something after the girl gets kidnapped, and it has this like maudlin piano music, and I was like, what? Why is this musical choice there? But then I realized, oh, it's the music that she was playing in her piano recital, and I was like, I see what you did there, movie. You're making connections. Like a movie does.
This is definitely movie. You know, like I said in the Discord before we even started, I was like, are we ready to talk about Denzel Washington in movie? But,
Yeah.
but there is validity to movie. You know, there is a way to do that style right, and there's a way to do it wrong. And this movie, in my opinion, falls directly in the middle of those two like camps. It's such a promising idea. I really like this type of revenge story where it's like not like the typical family revenge or something like that. And I mean, I guess
it's not Taken with Liam Neeson.
Exactly.
It's more nuanced than that.
And so I think that has some promise to it. This movie has a lot of promise, and I'm very forgiving on a creator when they had an idea and it just didn't end up being what they wanted it to be, because I've just been there so many times of like, this just never turned out. Either I asked too many questions, or I got too much input, or not enough. And I kind of feel like that's what this was kind of an idea that was strong, but just fell through the insecurity or just whatever it may be. And it's unfortunate, but it's still entertaining.
Mick LaSalle has a great review, little blurb from it. It says, "This is garbage, but it's entertaining garbage." And I could not have agreed more. That's the last review that I had on here. I was going to round it out with that, but I'm just sprinkling them in now.
Yeah, I will say I actually did buy in this watch into the idea that like he was very resistant to do anything but drive her around and just be a bodyguard, right? Just literally be a body. And she gets in the back seat of the car because she's like smart enough and intelligent enough to know that like, okay, fine, you want to play it like that, I'll just be the little rich girl who rides in the back seat. And then he started like helping her with her swimming and shit like that, and I was like, okay, I like that aspect, you know? I think that the parents really pissed me off.
Yeah,
I like would subtitle this movie "How Not to Be Parents." They're just the worst people, character-wise, and I think acting-wise. I mean, I don't want to start on the Latin pop star, Mark Antony, right?
Yeah, Mark Antony just like, I don't know what the fuck.
Oh, is that guy a pop star?
Yeah, he's just like a Latin music pop star that ended up being the one that J-Lo married instead of Ben Affleck, which makes him relevant to movies only because of that. Yeah, just like, I don't know, because of that, I guess.
Did you guys love the mom's fluctuating Southern accent?
Right? Okay, so
It was killing me the whole movie.
Rhoda Mitchell. Every scene with her was so strange and unnatural. And
So plastic.
She would start every sentence with like a southern drawl, and then it would change and like go away very quickly.
She only knew how to say certain words in a Southern accent, like Bible and stuff like that. But like it was like only the word. She had like 25 words she knew how to say in a Southern accent, and everything else was in a normal accent. It was so distracting. And there's a lot of like, and as someone who likes this movie, like I'm not sitting here like this is an amazing movie. Like I said, I understand its drawbacks, and I mean there are times in this watch that I really laughed out loud at some of the stupidity. Like they're part of a brotherhood called La Hermandad. It's like
I wrote that
a brotherhood called the Brotherhood.
Yes, I wrote that down too.
I was cracking up so hard.
Speaking of unintentionally hilarious things, was it odd to anyone else that he called Mexico City a very special place at the very end? After, and I'm going to quote a review here, after spending 2 hours depicting it as the worst hellhole in the hemisphere.
I mean, that was most likely just a studio decision. I had probably the director or the creative crew, or I don't think anyone had like any part of that. Probably it was just like, studio was like, we kind of painted a pretty gnarly sepia toned picture of Mexico City.
I mean, I don't care who did it. It's in the movie.
Yeah, but I think there's just a difference. Like that just sounds like typical studio bullshit. Like,
I think that speaks though to the flower of the concrete thing. If they're riding on that theme, where it's like he found his beauty in this shitscape of a film. I mean, city.
But we do a lot of movies on New York and L.A. and how shitty they are. Like I definitely agree with you, Alex, that this is very much is a caricature of a place in Mexico. I always thought that this place, it would have been so much better if this wasn't Mexico City, if this was literally just like a place in Mexico, and that was literally the title card.
Yeah, seriously.
Because it would have just made more sense, I guess, to the story. I mean, the fact that it takes place in Mexico City really has nothing to do with the story besides Mexico City is bad. And that's the general theme. So I get it. And that's why I kind of prefaced in the beginning is like, this is not a representation of Mexico City. This is a fictional world that the writers and directors have created. And that's why it's like you always have to preface it like in this world.
I don't know. It sounded like from reading the trivia that a lot of the stuff that happened to the characters happened to the actual, talent on the quote unquote set. Like everyone had to have bodyguards. There was like, I don't know, all kinds of shit going on.
Sure. I mean, there's horrible places in lots of parts of the world, but like and you can tell that story easy. And like, that's kind of what I'm saying is like, we write stories about New York and LA and many others, any other big metropolises that have lots of seedy underbellies and crimes, and just because we do it on Mexico City doesn't inherently make it racist. But and I don't think it is racist, but it is a caricature. It definitely is a fictional representation that is hyped up. Now, if they had to have bodyguards, sure, but it's also a very impoverished country, and you're walking around with like $4 million cameras, and so like just crimes of necessity.
Kidnappers would get a lot of money for Denzel. I'll tell you what.
So it's like,
seriously,
if you go to a place that's poor with a lot of rich people and rich equipment, don't be surprised if you need a couple bodyguards.
Yeah. All I'm saying is I thought it was funny to have a title card at the end saying, "Thank you, Mexico City. You're a very special place," after depicting it as a caricature.
After he goes through and like slaughters it. Like it just like tears the city apart.
I didn't get to bring this up during the City of God review, but there were some like scholars and stuff who felt that City of God was like highly exploitative of the people who lived there. And I disagree with that mostly. Not 100% like, but I think there's a nature of exploitation in film just inherently in general.
If you go from a first world country to a poorer country and like use you're inherently exploiting their resources. It's just part of like filmmaking in another country. If you're going to go there, if you're not hiring local actors, that's why there's such a big push to do this now, is to hire local actors, and
which they did in City of God.
Exactly, and that's exactly your point, is they did that in City of God, which I think speaks to your point that that's not really exploitative. But in this movie, I'm sure a lot of these Mexican American actors,
it borders, I feel like, more on
this movie borders on exploitation.
Yeah,
for sure. And in genre and in that sense as well.
It teeters a little bit on the edge. And there's definitely a heavy, we would be remiss to mention the extremely overly heavy-handed religious aspect.
Yes.
This is
like
the version of Guadalupe.
Our religious buddy drawing our attention to the fact that his initials are JC.
Yeah, it's quite. I mean, it's there's a lot of scenes where it's like, oh yeah, well, I'm starting to read the Bible now, and he's like, he's like, that's good. You keep.
I'm gonna reach for the bottle. Oh wait, the Bible instead.
I had a flashback of you and I watching the last duel, Jeff, when you looked over at me, put out your hand, and said, "Is this heavy?"
Yep, exactly. It's just like it hits those boxes as well for sure. And I mean, I don't think we've really gone into the story or narrative, so I mean, I think we've kind of talked about it enough.
Do we need to?
I mean, Mexico City, kidnappers. I think it's.
Yeah,
I think
Denzel goes crazy.
Yeah, it's like a buddy
kills
cop,
people,
or not a buddy. It's like a buddy movie.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yes.
Oh yeah, Christopher Walken's in this
movie, and he's like hilarious. He's like this adulterer, but like also has a very good his character was so fucking confusing. Even after this is like my 15th watch. I don't know how many watches, but it's like, is he a weapons smuggler? Is he just is he just a general smuggler? He's got a wife and kid, and they really try to emphasize that he loves his wife, but he's also like got a mansion full of Mexican pussy everywhere. It's like, what's going on?
His character exists solely to deliver that speech where he's like, what does he say? His art is death. Like,
yeah, he's
that
going to paint his masterpiece.
He's going to paint his masterpiece.
Yeah, it's stay out of his way. Like, it's, yeah, I mean, he's there to do that, and he's there to get the character the gun montage.
Yeah. Other than that, it's like a pretty fucking predictable story. I had never seen it once again, but I was like, oh, that lawyer did it. That lawyer's really suspect, and that's what I'm putting my money on.
Especially because it's Mickey Rourke.
Yeah, it's Mickey Rourke.
If you picked any other actor, I think that would have been a decent reveal. But you picked scarred up, beat up, gravelly ass Mickey Rourke as your lawyer. Like, that's right away that lawyer is a bad guy.
Yeah, you have the setup of like he tells him to just get a half decent bodyguard, and you're like, and then he just disappears from the movie. You're like, okay, sure, movie. You're really pulling the fast one on me there.
Yeah, well, at the beginning, he says like, Mark Anthony's character asks him, he's like, well, what ends up happening? He's like, oh, they just always end up paying the money. And so it's like
it's very clear.
Yeah. The twist is what Mark Anthony was like totally okay with it. I don't know.
I actually liked that it went there because it wasn't like I was expecting it to just be the lawyer, and I liked that you just find him decapitated and then it leads off in these other directions.
Yeah.
So it was like, because I was really angry for a minute. I was like, is this all this is leading up to? Is this reveal that I called in the first 5 minutes? No, it went further than that.
It tries to intertwine different narratives. Like, you got like the geopolitical narrative of like the corrupt cops that are working with the criminals. It is based on a novel. Yeah, so it does have like that element, and that makes sense because it does have those kind of narrative threads that you can see like, oh, is there a bigger story here that they're trying to tell, and they're just not doing it well, which is the answer is yes and yes, and it's just. But there was something I did want to mention that I thought was really funny, and I kind of lost it, but it's just in general this movie is comical when it's trying not to be, and that is a bad thing in an action revenge drama, unfortunately.
The biggest problem for me is just I can't get over the visual style. I just hate it.
Yeah.
I think I would be more firmly in your camp, Jeff, of being like, I can see the problems, but I enjoy it anyway, if I didn't hate the way it was directed. Like, the direction is bad. If this movie wins whenever Dakota Fanning is on screen or when her and Denzel are on screen, and the movie is like really propelled by the fact that Denzel has the gravitas that he does.
Yeah. I did remember what I wanted to say though, which is a question I like to ask because I got to watch this movie with my wife and it was her first time a while back, and she was, bought and sold by the fact that she thought Dakota Fanning was dead. Did you think that she was actually okay?
You would have. They didn't show it. There's no way.
Okay,
not 0% of me.
Okay,
I knew she was alive. Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, I really just like I wanted to make sure that like I wanted to see, because that's, to me, the biggest plot hook of the movie. That's where they're trying to sell their audience, and it's where you get to talk to
I've
someone.
seen movies. I know how movies work, and this is a movie. There was no way they were going to kill that girl.
Yeah, especially with like that level of acting.
I want to just say, because I've been so harsh on it, this movie is not the source of the problems like that I'm talking about in Hollywood. I think that this movie is a symptom of audience expectation, the way that we consume movies nowadays, and the way that people make movies for this giant machine that is the film industry. So I'm not blaming like the things that this movie gets wrong on it solely, right?
Sure.
I just think at the end of the day, I don't know. It's just very flaccid in my mind.
I agree. I think we can all attest to the fact that this film has strong points, promising points, but the visual style, the direction makes it so irritating that at times you just can't like pay attention to anything else. And that's on fault to the director. And I totally agree with you, Alex, that like this movie isn't like rotten to its core. It's just soft and mushy on the outsides, and you don't really want to eat it.
Well, I love that Alex said this, because it ties into the first of this last little segment for review reactions. Because the first one I have written down here is that the film exemplifies a widely held mindset of its era, one that calls for simplistic, brutal solutions to highly complex, awful things that are happening in the world. So I picked these reviews because I thought that they would have some like possibly interesting talking points.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting one because it's true.
Mm-hmm.
It's true that
100%.
This is simplistic, brutal solution. But my question is like, does that really matter in a movie like this? Because if you're part of like, this is where I'll give the movie credit in another area that I haven't spoken about. Because it is like a mean-spirited movie where Denzel Washington tortures people. Maybe you don't want to see that if that doesn't sound good. But I am in on that part. Because if you kidnap little Dakota Fanning, go ahead. Torture him. Murder him.
Kill
I'm
them
in.
all.
Kill them all.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Exploitation cinema, baby.
First line in the movie.
Definitely. Yes. And then they repeat it.
Yeah, it's so good. But yeah, I like that you pointed that out, Jesse, because I think this movie sits in a special camp of post 9/11 movies where like having the badass who handles issues beyond the way the justice system handles them. It's kind of like how every American felt, I think, like they wanted to do. They wanted to not enlist in the military and actually go fight, but they wanted to go take the fight to the insurgents. And they really make that point of when they're describing his background. It's like Afghanistan, Iraq, counterinsurgency. So they really kind of drum up that kind of Islamophobia a little
pandering.
bit. Yeah, it's definitely
the
pandering.
core of this movie is definitely pandering to a certain like demographic
Fathers
who has
and
those
daughters.
kind of values. Yeah, fathers.
That's
and
the
daughters.
biggest
For
target
sure.
audience, 100%.
This is like
There are
pre-taken
dads
audience.
who watch this film and say, this is what I would do. Despite how
100%.
shitty I've been to my daughter my whole life, if she got into this situation, I would do this for her. Kill them all. Like, I don't know. But
It's an easy role to inhabit for a vast swath of the population.
yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
This one says Helgeland's screenplay is too lazy to investigate Washington's viciousness. This promising movie ends up spinning its wheels in a conventionally dopey action plot. I like the point about the screenplay being too lazy to investigate Washington's viciousness. I thought that was a really interesting point, and that ties into like what Alex was saying about the character a little while ago, and the sort of the undercooked nature of the character, I suppose.
Well,
like, does it matter that we don't like get an undercurrent of like who he actually is? Just these like easy motifs.
Yeah, because it makes it annoying for me, at least.
I don't think it matters as much as it matters that it was done better than it was done. You can be subtle about someone's past and make them seem badass. I mean, Clint Eastwood did it a lot.
Yeah.
It's more about the fact that they were never in. It was so lukewarm. They were never fully in about like who he was, but then they decided like almost in response to that criticism that you're mentioning, Jesse, like they decided, okay, well, we need to have Christopher Walken have that little speech because we need to describe like who he is fully.
Yeah.
And it just felt ham-fisted and clumsy.
Yeah, it doesn't investigate him. It just tells you these, he's a painter
badass.
of death. He
Dude.
is badass.
At one
That's
point,
like
the actors are handing around a prop like document that's like his background check, and it's just a Word document that's like 12 years counterinsurgency.
Did you pause it and read it?
No, but I.
Oh my God.
It just was like I looked at it and I was like, okay, like
Pause it and read it. I was cracking up, dude. It's like it's written like a 15-year-old would write their first resume.
Yeah.
It's like horribly formatted. It's like literally just bullet points with like the most intense fucking shit next to it. It's like planned and plotted for Project Isomorph fucking. It's like Jesus Christ, dude. What? Like this would be in like a military sealed docket that someone would have to like request info from. You don't just like type this up on Word and give it to
oh yeah. That was another infuriating part that was really lazy is the whole news person angle where she can just access any fucking information that like you would need to be FBI level to get.
Well,
because
I think it speaks to Alex's point about this being kind of a caricature of Mexico, where it's like, look how fragile their infrastructure is.
I don't even think they thought about it that far.
But I think
I really don't.
I don't think you can do this kind of shit without thinking about it, and that's I think the root of the problem.
Yeah,
is that half
but they
the
just
time,
needed a character that could like get him the things that the script needed him to get information wise.
But then they try to make a strong female character, but they very 2004 it, hand on the hip, finger wag. Like,
yeah,
but
I know.
she's also a slut.
I know.
It's like, what the fuck, movie?
Yeah. See,
this
the
movie's
random
bonkers.
like throwing around of. That's what I mean about it being a symptom of like this disease in Hollywood, where they were just like, it's okay to identify what your audiences are liking. That's totally fine. But when you just throw all of it at the wall, and it's like, oh, we're gonna have
the same thing Michael Bay does.
Exactly. We're going to have Mark Anthony in front of the Virgin de Guadalupe, and then we're going to have his wife walk in and get all sexy time and like take her jacket off, because we know audiences like sex, and if you juxtapose it with religion, it makes it edgy and cool. And then they move on.
Thank God they moved on.
Yeah, and I'm like,
you know what? My favorite part of this whole thing today is we've never gotten Alex this heated before. In 28 episodes.
And it's still so tame. It's still such
still
adorable.
He's
not
just
that
like
bad.
he's a simmerer. He doesn't fly off the handle, Jeff style.
Yeah, exactly. If you compare this to like my In the Name of the King review, it's like I sound like a lunatic.
You sound like you're banging the desk with your hand while you're shouting about your hatred for it.
So there's a different levels of my mental illness on display here, but yes, I definitely I can see how this movie is enraging. I definitely do. And when looking at it through a critical eye, I found it just be comical. At its core, all of its faults just make me laugh. It's like, oh my God, that was really corny.
Yeah.
And there were times like where you could tell it was like a very like frantic writer's room. Like I think the Semtex in the butt thing is hilarious.
Oh, the
honestly,
butt grenade. Yeah.
Because it's the butt grenade. That's perfect. Because it's so like, it's so intense. Like before that, like he starts with the cutting off of the fingers. Okay, cool. I get that. That was a brutal scene. That scene was believable. And then it's like, okay, he goes and busts in the club and is just like shooting folks. All right, whatever. And everyone's like partying, like, boom, the club blew up. Woo!
Yeah, that was a groaner as well. It's like, really? Is that really how that would play out?
And so like there's just a lot of movie in this movie. It's like too much peanut butter on a sandwich. It just gets stuck in the back of your throat and just like clags you up, and you're just like, oh God.
There we go. We finally got it. Jeff comparing movie to food reference of the episode.
Well, also,
I feel like that surmounted the video game references is the food references.
No, I
now.
actually had a video game one too.
All right,
because
sweet.
Max Payne 3 does Tony Scott's aesthetic so much better than Tony Scott. I don't know if he ever even like understood that game or saw it, or even understood that it was kind of an homage to his, because it was kind of an homage, because that game definitely does this style with the like text over the screen. It takes place in Latin America. It's very much the same type of narrative, but done so much better and actually entertaining. So there you go. Food reference, video game reference, boxes checked.
Nice.
I have some alternate castings that might have happened, so I'm going to run these by you.
Oh, I think I know a few of these. This would be great.
So we've got Arnold Schwarzenegger.
As the
By
girl,
the way, I'm going to read
girl,
one.
right?
Yeah, as the little girl. I'm going to
As
read one
Lupita.
more review before this.
Greasy bear.
Yeah, Denzel Washington is so charming, so charismatic, and so heroic in his role he makes the movie. And there's also one saying that the chemistry between Washington and Fanning, like we've said, is the reason this works at all.
Yeah.
But I also like this one. Seriously, someone needs to stage an intervention. Sit Scott down and tell him that repeated jump cuts, slow motion shots, and fiddling around with the exposure don't enhance the viewing experience. They detract from it. For fuck's sake. But I derailed myself somehow.
Yeah.
We were doing alternate casting.
Jesus.
Because it's like, this is such a Denzel movie. It's hard to see anyone else in that role. Schwarzenegger would have been fucking hilarious. The movie would have been absolute trash.
Oh, it would have
But
been
maybe
great
even
trash.
better.
Yeah,
in a
it would have
way,
been
yeah.
good trash.
In the same vein, you had Sylvester Stallone
Yeah.
as a possible.
That's even worse.
I mean, Tony Scott has worked with all of these actors before.
Stallone's just a
Yeah.
broken-faced version of Schwarzenegger.
They're both surprisingly short.
Oh, yeah, I heard that.
I
I
did
always
not
know.
imagine Schwarzenegger as like 6'2" or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably I think they just put him on boxes when he's filming scenes with other people.
They had De Niro on huge platforms in The Irishman.
Oh,
Really?
De Niro.
Yeah,
in
But De
this
Niro was
film.
actually, he was supposed to be, he was offered the role of Denzel's role as well, of Creasy, which I thought would have been hilarious.
I could see
Alan
that.
Rickman
It's not really his type of
would have
role.
been weird.
That's not his
Yeah.
role.
It would have been
like,
weird.
He would have been like,
especially at that
Hello.
time in 2004.
hello, darling.
Like,
yeah,
it
right
would've-
after Dogma.
Well, no, right in the midst
He is
too
the
of Harry
Metatron.
Potter.
He could have been the Metatron in this movie too. Religious symbolism.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that just sounds like not agency, not network, the studio just throwing out
Is the 37th name on the list?
Yeah, just throwing out offers.
I actually think this movie could have worked with like a reverse of the plot where Denzel gets captured and it turns into like a Home Alone style.
And she has to go on a violent rampage to save him.
But like in a goofy way. Like instead of guns, she rolls like marbles
No,
on the ground
you
in the
keep the
club or
tone.
something. You want her
She's
to use like
cutting off
lethality
fingers.
and stuff.
Little Dakota Fanning is shoving grenades up butts.
That first torture scene with Dakota, I will have endless enjoyment now, Alex, of picturing Dakota Fanning doing that entire scene, like leaning in, but like she can't reach up to his face.
Yeah.
She's too short. So she's sitting on like all her books in her
Yeah.
book bag, and she's like, "Latter minute, dad."
Yeah,
Professional.
exactly.
And she's like cutting his fingers off and burning them. Oh,
The
man.
cutest little psychopath you've ever
Yeah.
seen.
I would
Yeah.
have that would have been a much better movie.
Oh man. Yeah, there are some others. Vigo would have been interesting.
I think he could have
Oh.
done that kind of role.
He could have
Oh,
pulled it
hell
off.
I think
Yeah.
De Niro could have done it. He just would
Yeah.
have been like an older bodyguard. I think it would have been a much more
De Niro could do anything.
subdued role.
De Niro could do
Cru-
that.
I think Tom Cruise was offered it too. I mean,
He was.
but you
God.
offer Tom Cruise. I mean, Tom Cruise probably gets
I'm
6,000
glad it
offers
wasn't
a year.
Tom Cruise. Keanu Reeves. He wasn't. I don't know.
He wasn't really.
He wasn't in his John Wick phase yet.
Yeah. He was in like the depths of the lull of his career at that point.
Yeah. Seriously. Gary Oldman would have been cool. He could have done it.
He's one of those. He can do anything.
He could do anything. Speaking
Yeah.
of true romance, that's maybe one of the best roles anyone has ever played, where he plays the white drug dealer who thinks he's Rastafarian.
God, I have not seen True Romance in a long time,
Fucking
brother.
love that character.
Was
Um,
Gerard Butler doing his thing in this time, like 2004? This might have been right before he broke out, but I could see
Rock
him in
and
a role
Rolla
like
was. We just did a Rock and Rolla
That
thing.
was-
What year was that?
That was 2008.
Yeah, that was in the I don't know.
It was a couple years after.
Yeah.
2008. Yeah, I don't think so. I think he was like
300.
I think he was
just
fighting
getting
across
there.
the world.
Yeah.
300 was 06, so he was like just about there.
Yeah.
But he ain't on the list, bro. Val Kilmer's on the list. Dennis Quaid is on the list. Michael Keaton is on the list.
Jeez. Liam Neeson,
Yeah.
they would have
Liam Neeson is on the
just
list.
sabotaged the entire Taken franchise if he would have fucking accepted this movie.
Seriously.
If he would have done this movie and then still tried to do the Taken franchise, people would be like, you just what?
Well,
Like,
when he did Taken, he didn't think it would take off. He was just like, I want to try being a badass because I've never been a badass. He just plays like, I don't know,
It'd be cool
Yeah.
to see Michael Caine
Michael Caine.
trying his
The
his
tender
hand,
age of 69.
just bumbling so
he would just be
Britishly
like
through
He
Mexico
wouldn't
City.
be a bodyguard. He'd be like the butler.
I know,
Like,
right?
He'd be like, excuse me.
You see a little girl way high.
You're oddly good at that.
All right.
Master Wayne.
Any other ones?
Nah, that's too many already.
Any alternate castings for Dakota Fanning?
I mean, she
man,
was so
you-
good.
Exactly.
Not.
I think that's
Yeah.
the point.
Like
It's I
Jodie
think they-
Foster from the 70s, I guess.
Yeah, I think they
Like,
kind of just like really zoned in on her. I think this was like kind of the height of her career too. I think she did a few other movies around this time where,
Yeah, she went on to do Twilight.
and then I think she kind of then she was in
She
what
does
was-
TV now.
yeah, she was in
War of the
recently,
Worlds. She's in War of the Worlds.
What was the
Oh,
Brad,
yeah.
God, Once Upon a Time in whatever, the Brad Pitt
Hollywood.
Hollywood. Once Upon a
Yeah,
Time in
yeah.
Hollywood. She was in that. She was a part of Charlie Manson's Foot Crew.
her and
organization.
That's right.
Amanda Seyfried. I always mix them up now.
Yeah.
They look
'cause
similar.
Yeah, she had a very unique look when she was young. She had like kind of the big eyes, the big blue eyes, and she had that like fun smile, and yeah, there was just there was a lot of unique look to her. I think
Those
that picked
hilarious
her up.
little kid teeth.
Yeah, and then definitely they like she grew up and kind of joined that like range and that group of just like mid-20s, 30s child actors. They kind of
I
do
mean,
TV and stuff like that.
It looked like she had a lot of fun making this movie, and that's good.
Yeah,
because
there
I
was a lot of
wish that I was
improv.
in a coma for 2 hours.
Yeah, we talked about the fact that her and Denzel did a lot of improv. Like
And
a
then-
lot of their scenes are improvised, or
Apparently
parts of them
most
are.
Apparently most of Christopher Walken and Denzel's scenes are also ad libbed.
That makes sense.
Like I think the whole discussion in the at the lunch when she gives him the pendant, I think that was like I could see easily on the script it saying like Denzel and Christopher Walken riff until Dakota decides it's a good time to give the
Right.
pendant, and I could easily
Yeah.
see that in brackets.
Yeah, I don't think we talked enough about how strange Christopher Walken's character was and how nonsensical, but fuck it. We're done. I think we'll wrap this one up
Yeah.
now. You guys have anything else to say before we close it out?
No.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, should anyone watch this movie, Alex?
Yeah, actually, I think they should. Because I'm a firm believer in watching all like
Movies.
forms of movies when you can, when it's reasonable, and like taking it seriously. Because I think it helps enhance movies that are actually very good. It's just hard to say in such a like field or like a study that is not objective, right? It's so up in the air for everyone. But I think that if you're looking for an entertaining weekend movie, hell yeah, this movie will whet your appetite, and it will satisfy all of the things that you're looking for.
Yeah, if you're looking for a movie that's like Man on Fire,
Yeah, like The
Yeah.
Rock. I think it's like similar in that sense. Like I'll watch that movie every single time I flip through the channels on TV.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely. Yeah, it's definitely a film that sits in that category, and yeah, I don't know. I had a thought, but I lost it.
yeah, it's entertaining garbage.
mhm.
I wish Tony Scott would settle the fuck down.
I mean, I think he passed away.
My biggest
so.
thing. He did.
Okay.
He died in 2012.
Then he settled down.
He settled.
permanently.
Oh man. Oh, poor Tony Scott. Yep. All right, Real Weirdos. We are the most professional film podcast on the internet. Signing off.
Bye-bye.
Later, everyone.
See y'all next week. Now our podcast is done, and we have to run. We know it is sad, but we had so much fun. Don't be bereft, Jesse, Alex, and Jeff. We'll be back real soon. The Reel Weirdos. We talk about movies for way too goddamn long. Bo 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 bo.